I want to welcome everybody to our regular Board of Education meeting, April 21st, 2016. We are going to kick things off with correspondence and communication with our superintendent, Mr. Michael Brooks.
We have two communications from the public. One I'm going to share from various groups. I'm going to share one with you. First of all, we got a letter from the president of Orange-Ulster School Boards, Dorothy Slattery, that the Orange-Ulster BOCE's budget passed unanimously, and our Board of Education supported that with a vote yesterday morning. So congratulations to Orange-Ulster BOCE's. You can continue to operate next year. Very good. And, yes. Mr. Berger is a representative from the Orange-Ulster BOCE School Board, so thank you for coming tonight, Mr. Berger. And we have also something from the Ulster County School Boards Association that Mr. Bell is going to read.
So we have a letter from Ulster County School Board Association that reads, on behalf of the Ulster County School Board Association, I am pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a recipient of the Ulster County School Board Association Distinguished Friend of Education Award for 2015-16. You were chosen for this award by the Marlborough Central School District Board of Education. The award is intended to recognize special people in our communities that give their time, effort, unselfishly to support our students and schools in Ulster County. We will be publicizing these awards in the local media and social media over the next month as part of this recognition. The award will be presented at the Ulster County School Board Association annual dinner on Thursday, May 26, 2016 at the Stonehenge Restaurant. We cordially invite you and a guest to join us for dinner. There will be a cash bar reception. Well, we don't need to get into that. So congratulations on being chosen as our Distinguished Friend of Education Award honoree. We thank you for your commitment and dedication to the education of our students in schools in Ulster County. We look forward to seeing you on May 26th. The board had an offline discussion as to who we would like to receive this award, and that person was Ms. Joanne Reed. As you might tell from Joanne's reaction, she was not aware of that.
It was actually a discussion that had been had about, well, we would like to have someone recognized from our board. This board works tirelessly, many nights a month, to put forth a quality education for the children of Marlborough. And it was absolutely unanimous as they started to talk that, unbeknownst to Joanne, that Joanne would be the person that this board said we want her to receive this on behalf of the board. So, Joanne, congratulations. Thank you. Yeah. Now that's timing you can't buy. That's good.
That's it for correspondence and communications. We'll go into our reports again with our superintendent of schools, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you very much. A couple of quick items before we get to the rest of our agenda. First of all, tonight we have a little larger audience because tonight the Board of Education is being asked to vote on some tenure recommendations. We have 2 teachers and 2 administrators that are being recommended for tenure. I want to remind the community and those present, and certainly the candidates and any future candidates, the tenure process is not a simple process. It's a very thorough process, very thoughtful process, full of evaluation, full of review. This Board of Education heavily scrutinizes the process of tenure, so this is not something you get, this is something you earn. So I want to tell you that I'm proud to make the recommendation of this group to administrators and to teachers to join the ranks of our tenured staff. You have earned this recommendation, and tonight the Board of Education will vote on that. So that's an important point in your careers tonight, and I thank you for coming, and families and friends that are here to support that, thank you for coming as well. I attended a meeting this afternoon on behalf of the Board of Education. It's called a Gateway meeting up in Ulster County, up in Kingston. There's a building project that is being proposed. You saw it in the paper recently if you read the Southern Ulster Times. Called the Bayside Project. It's an apartment complex next to the middle school. And this Gateway meeting was bringing together some key stakeholders, neighbors, and other agencies that may be impacted by that building project, and allow them to put forth areas of concern and issues that the project presents. So in the coming months, we'll be communicating as a Board of Education some of those perspectives and make sure the town board and the planning board are aware of concerns that the school district has. Certainly, we have open doors for all children that come to this school district. So being able to plan for any growth is something we want to be certainly cognizant of, but it also may impact some transportation-related issues and how we get into and out of the middle school, because this is right adjacent to the middle school property. So we want to make sure that we are keeping Supervisor Lanzetta and the town board aware of our concerns. I certainly appreciate Supervisor Lanzetta and the town board's openness and willingness and invitation to participate in the process. So that is a very good thing, and we will keep the board apprised and the public apprised of where that is going. Lots more discussion on that in the near future. Tonight also is a final adoption for our 2016-2017 budget. The board has been deliberating a budget proposal put forth by myself and our administrative team for the last couple of months, and tonight is the culmination of that. And we will have set a budget by the end of tonight for the voters of Marlborough Central School District to vote on May 17th. So that's happening tonight as well. The May 17th vote is at Marlborough Elementary School from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. Please come vote and share your perspective with that vote. And finally, congratulations to Joanne. That's a very nice award, and I am very proud of you for doing the work that you do, and this board is very happy with what you did, Joanne, too. And I'm respectfully asking the Board of Education to add an item onto new business. We're making a request to the Mid-Hudson Athletic Association, Mahal, to continue a relationship that we've had with the Highland School District for merging our boys' swim teams. So in order for us to continue that, I'd like the Board of Education to stand behind it with an action tonight, so that the president of the board and myself can sign that document and keep that merger going. It is up to Mahal to approve that or not, but the first step is Superintendent, Board President, and Athletic Director to make that request. So I'd ask if we could add that to new business.
Is there any objection to adding the merger between Highland and Marlborough swim teams? No objection?
And I have the resolution, so I'll pass it out in a minute. And with that, I'm finished.
We'll move on now to our report from Orange County School Board Representative, Ms. Joanne Reed.
At this time, I did not go to the last meeting.
Okay. Move on to, well, Larry, anything to add? Anything we should know about? Did she miss anything? Okay. Well, that will move on to Ulster County School Boards.
The one snowstorm we had this year was the Monday night of the last meeting. So there was no meeting, they rescheduled it for our board meeting on Thursday night, so we were not there.
Well, fresh back from his stint in Fiddle of the Roof, our student representative, Mr. Daniel Maurer.
All right. Hey, guys. It's been a while. Yeah, going off of what Mr. Bell said, the drama club at the high school did put on a very successful production of Fiddler on the Roof. That was very exciting. Spring sports are underway now as well. We have great athletic programs. If you can't tell, our basketball teams made that pretty clear this past winter. AP exams are starting up soon. I think the first one is May 2nd, actually, which is next week, so week after. A lot of our students are prepping for those. You can get college credit, of course, if you do well on those tests, so that's exciting. And senior trip's happening right now. We have a lot of seniors down at Disney World. I wish I was there, but alas, I am here. But that's okay. Yeah, and I really don't have much besides that. Students haven't brought me any grievances of any sort, so I won't waste any more of your time.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to our 2016-17 budget presentation, again with our superintendent of schools.
Thank you. Okay, so we're not going to be going through a long presentation tonight. We do have a series of slides in case the board would like to refer back to them, but I want to remind the board and the public there were two goals that we focused ourselves around, some administrative focus and certainly a Board of Education focus, both of which brought us to the point of addressing academic and support for academics and improvement and growth in the future, and also promoting short-term and long-term fiscal stability. We believe that this budget absolutely accomplishes both things. It is an important first step in a long period of time that we are going to realize real academic growth and real financial stability. And I certainly appreciate the debate and discussion that we have had, and I appreciate the administrative and instructional staff that have brought us to the point where tonight we're asking for the Board of Education to adopt our 2016-17 budget. So without further delay, Pat's going to glance past a few slides with some key highlights and updates, and if there's no questions, we can move on to the next level.
Thanks, Mike. So again, we're just going to recap information that we've already seen a number of times. Our tax levy for the 16-17 school year, $34,225,463, a 0.11% decrease in the levy from last year, a reduction of about $37,500. So again, worth noting, and I appreciate the shout out, Mark, in the paper, but that is the second year in a row that we'll be experiencing a reduction in our tax levy. And the tax levy, again, the amount of money we ask from the district residents to support the educational program. As we had mentioned previously, our estimated tax rate is approximately 3.21% increase. In a normal circumstance, when you'd see a reduction in the levy, you'd see a reduction in the tax rate. But because we have the continuing devaluation of the roasting facility, we do continue to see that kind of inverse relationship of what we would expect. So again, next year is the year where we see the kind of weird correction when we drop the roasting off as a large parcel, but then we become very stable after that. So again, 3.21. And in a contingent budget, if the budget were to fail, we would remove $67,500 in equipment expenditures, would have no impact on the levy amount. Actually, the levy amount could increase to a frozen levy, which would bump that up to about 3.3% increase if we were to decide to go to that direction. So this slide we like to show because we think it gives a good graphical representation of what we've been through in the past 10 years. You see the massive correction going from 12-13 to 13-14 when we closed the elementary schools. And again, in a normal world, when you'd see a 15% decrease in your tax levy, you would expect to see a corresponding drop in the tax rate, and instead we saw a 15% increase. But as you can see from the 12-13 year forward, we've had a slight increase and then 2 years of decreases. And you'd have to go back just about 10 years to get to a point where we had a levy that the amount we're proposing for next year. Included, just to mention briefly, is the Smart Schools Bond Act money. There's no tax impact. We have a $1.07 million allocation. We're proposing to spend about $750,000 of that next year, with a corresponding increase in revenue of $750,000. So in summary, a very slight correction to the overall amount, an increase of about $15,000. And we went back and really went through with a fine-tooth comb. We found some adds and we found some deducts. The net effect just bumped that proposed budget amount at the top to $53,675,926. So again, just a summary of our revenues and expenses, and we are wrapping adult education into the general fund for next year. Again, you'll see in tonight's agenda, you have an amendment to the budget. We hope to avoid that next year by having that wrapped in from the beginning. We will be putting forward a proposition to form a capital reserve fund. Again, 10-year lifespan, $10 million maximum funding level. Voter authorization is required to create the fund and would also be required to spend money from the reserve. And again, the important point to note is that there's no taxation of anybody to fund this reserve if we choose to fund it at any point in the near future, if it's voted and approved by the voters. So, is that quick enough? Any questions? Sure.
One, at the end of the year, this year, the money that's left over in the budget, where does that go? Does it go to the wish list? Does it go back into reserve?
It goes into reserves and to fund balance. When we looked at the last meeting and we ran through that progression out forward, looking at reserves and fund balance, that amount included what our anticipated balance would be at the end of this year.
I guess my other question is, because I don't see, and I know Marlboro community, they always want to know what we're saving. And there was no thing like, every year we always get told what we're saving on, how are you looking at the budget even for this coming year? Like, have you cut back on anything, or are we saving on anything? Are there,
Yeah, we've highlighted a little bit about the refinancing of our debt for the 2006 elementary school renovation project. We saved $1.8 million over the course of 12 years of that remaining life of that bond. That equates to approximately $140,000 a year in actual savings. So when you look at, and what we showed last meeting, where we showed the general areas of increase or decrease, that was one of the areas of decrease, was in debt service, $140,000.
Let me speak this piece on that, too.
Sure.
If you recall back to the first presentation, it goes back a little bit now, but this budget actually includes a reauthorization or reallocation, excuse me, not reallocation of approximately 10 staff members, equivalent of 10 FTEs, into completely different roles that they're doing right now, restructures and resupports, new initiatives that has zero tax impact on people because it's taking existing staff, existing programs, and reshuffling them into a way that we feel is substantially more efficient for our instructional program. Specifically, it's addressing some AIS-related matters in elementary and middle school, and also a major technology initiative that's behind the bones of that $750,000 Smart Schools Bond Act. That initiative is going to allow a major upgrade to our network, a major upgrade which is a safety and security thing to our phone and communication system, and it's going to put one-to-one devices into 4 grade levels in the middle school and high school. You know, our 2-year initiative is that every middle schooler and high school will be issued a computer, a device, in the next 2 years. Next year, we're hoping to get 4 of the grades. The following year, the balance of those grades. So that realignment of some staff actually is putting together the team that is going to support that. So that's free money from the state, the $750,000. It's coming no matter what, and we don't need to add any staff to be able to support those machines. We believe that we can successfully do that with the restructuring of what we currently have. That's real savings. Not in the sense that the costs went down, but we reallocated existing staff.
I understand, but I'm saying, like, our regular day-to-day work is not, I mean, that part is great, and adding the staff that we need
Yep.
to educate our children is one thing. But just like on the doing those, are we looking at our budget constantly, are we looking where we spend our money?
Yes.
That's what I
Every single small expense and large expense is heavily scrutinized by this gentleman right here and by our existing administrative staff. We look at things very, very closely. We have very intense conversations about I want to spend every single side of that nickel 3 times before it's actually, the bill is written. So,
And that's questions that I get from the community, is how are we watching our pennies? What are we doing? Are we making sure that, you know, all because somebody puts in, oh, we want a new cup, or we're buying a new cup? And my answer is always that we look at everything. If we need it for the children or we need it for the school, yes, we're going to get it. If we don't need it, we don't purchase it. So that's, I just
we want to make purchases that impact the point that the child's pencil touches the paper. Those are the important expenditures. Make sure that we put the right staff in the right place, make sure we hire the right staff in the right place, keep the positions so that we can directly impact children's learning in the classroom. Everything else is ancillary.
Pat, how much money was put back in reserve last year?
What were we? It was about 1.7 million? Is that, I think, right in that ballpark?
Right. So that would be a good attestament to the fact that we're, yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we're tracking to run in the black again. This year, we'll be
Yes.
putting more money away.
Yep.
So
We anticipate about 1.5 to 1.7 million again at the end of this year. And that goes with what we've talked about previously, that, you know, we're going to expend about 96.5% of what we budget for expenditures. But we do. I mean, we have conversations I won't repeat here, but to the point where I think some people get frustrated that we're constantly questioning, hey, is this necessary? Could this have been done differently? But we are having those conversations, so people are aware that we're watching.
That's what, you know, people in the community need to know, because it's been a rough couple of years, we still have another year to go. And I know, you know, it's frustrating for not only, you know, maybe I know it's frustrating for everybody in our community. It's hard.
Right, and you have seen, you know, massive restructuring of this school district just in the time that I've been here, right?
It's been positive, everything has been absolutely positive, so, I'm glad you answered my questions, and thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask that you go back to the slide with the bar graphs? This slide here, I believe, is an excellent educational tool for the community to grasp. It gives you this true historical perspective of where the district has been and where we are. And I think that this really, if you don't have plans for this to be in the newsletter or any correspondence that goes out to the community, I feel that this particular chart is very important to give the community a true education on the work that you've put forth here.
We actually met with our PR person today, and we insisted that this get included, because it does represent very, you know, it gives in just one picture, it tells a complete story of what's occurred and what we're dealing with now. I mean, so obviously you see the last 4 years have been significantly lower on our tax levy than the prior 4 years, and, you know, with a downward trend where we are now. And again, in a normal world, you would see those lines start to dip down also, but because of the continuing court-ordered devaluation of the roasting facility, they continue to just edge up a little bit. But this is really indicative of where we've been, where we were, and where we are now. So in 12-13, when the power plants were paying 60% of the levy, you know, I think things were a little bit looser. Now they're not there. Things are very much tighter.
And just to clarify for anybody that may have missed some of these presentations, the goal is to try and stay at the cap for as long as possible, so that when we hit that first opportunity to knock some debt off, we'll finally see some real relief, which is in 3 or 4 years.
2021, 21, 22, yes.
So four school years. So the goal is to try and hold the line as much as possible, understanding that there is relief on the way, and we've planned financially to try and accomplish that, so that we're not taking any more than we need to.
Right, and we've talked numerous times about the fact that we're heavy on our debt compared to neighboring school districts. We understand that. We understand we have to retire some debt and let it go away, but that's also a critical piece of why we're asking for the capital reserve to be formed, because that will allow us to save money where we can, so when it does come time to make upgrades to the facilities or significant repairs to the facilities, we don't have to go out to bond. We don't have to, again, you know, take on additional debt that will burden us for the years to come, whether we not take on a debt or we take on a smaller amount of debt because we have a significant down payment. And again, nothing that we anticipate right now, but, you know, 10 years, a lot can happen.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
Just to piggyback off of what Bill and Susan said, I like the graph, but I think we need to make it crystal clear to the community of where we are now, where we plan on being, and when we start dropping off the debt, that they will see a reduction. I'm kind of in the same boat. We get a lot of positive feedback, but people want to know, when is that relief coming? That's the big question, is always, when is it coming? We need to make it crystal clear when it's coming, and, you know, what we're looking to achieve to get there.
Right. Our hope is between now and then we continue to see growth in state aid. We're still not anywhere near where we should be funded at, given the dramatic loss in value that the district's experienced.
Right. You and I had a brief conversation before the meeting started. It's easy for us to see it because we're here, and, you know, every day we get an email or something, we see it. But for the general community that doesn't see this on a daily basis, it's a little difficult to understand.
Right.
So I just want to make it as simple as possible so people understand it fully.
Yeah, the plan is, as Mike has mentioned previously, our soft landing we knew we had a revenue hole that was going to appear next year. We've known it for a couple of years. We've been planning for it to happen. And as of right now, we're following that plan, and we're hoping that gets us through the next couple of years, which are going to be pretty lean on funding, unless the state is able to come up with a little bit more money, which we are hopeful they will.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
I was just gonna ask Pat to go back, you explained the last time we were, between the cap and the levy, why we're actually there. That with the budget.
Is your microphone on?
I didn't really hear.
If, with the tax cap and the levy, that basically we're right where we should be at this point.
We're
We
at,
don't want-
our tax cap is what our levy is. So our cap was negative 0.11%, and that's what we're proposing.
I think what she's getting at is that there's often confusion between what the budget is and what the levy is. The budget is the total expenditure for the year. The levy is how much we require from business owners and homeowners.
Right, so when you look at this slide, it kind of puts it in a better perspective, because you can see, the levy is a component of our overall revenue sources. Our largest component, followed by state aid. We then have a pilot payment from the dance camera facility, the reserves and fund balance that we plan to use. And again, we're not planning to use that whole 4.37 million, because we're planning to spend 96.5% of our budgeted expenditure. So we hope there'll be roughly 2 million of that left over at the end.
Anyone else? Any questions or comments from the public? Mark?
We're going into our second year with the pilot.
No.
In 16, 17. So 15, 16 is our first year this year, and it's a 6-year deal. Right. The first year, they paid their tax bill, but they counted it as the tax payment was the payment in lieu of taxes. It's a little. What happens in year 7? Year 7, they then will go back on the books. Hopefully they'll be valued properly, and then they would essentially that money would roll back into the levy, and it should increase the overall levy, but by we would add that 1.19 to the 34.225, so we'd have 35.
And it would
4.
probably increase. That
And-
1.19 would probably increase.
Right, we would hope that
They
that
would
would be valued at
reevaluate
more
the
than
plan.
$15 million by that
Hopefully
point.
by then Indian Point is closed. And
So the levy will go up, but Dan Scammer is still going to pay their big chunk of it. So the remaining portion would still be divvied out amongst everybody other than Dan Scammer.
And the other last question, you mentioned at the beginning that we're down, this one coming up, point.
0.11%.
You said this is the second year, what was the first year one like
The first year we were,
last year?
I don't remember offhand. I could get that for you though.
0.11 higher than this year.
Right, but the reduction from the prior year. Yeah, I can get that for you. Sure. Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we're going to move on to public comment on this evening's agenda items. Is there anybody that had a question or comment about tonight's agenda items? Any questions, comments on the agenda items? With that, we're going to move on to item number 7. Resolve the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, acknowledges the receipt of the following 2015-16 reports and minutes as presented. Motion for approval of reports. Joanne, second. James, any discussion? James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes?
Russell?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Item number 8. Personnel recommendations, resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves the following personnel recommendations. Motion for approval of personnel recommendations. Frank, second. Joanne, discussion. I'd like to point out a few notable items on the personnel items, specifically the tenure appointees for this evening. Ms. Robin Hecht, who's Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Mr. Patrick Witherow, Director of Business and Finance, Mr. Scott, and I apologize if I kill this, Heisel, who is one of our science teachers, and Michelle Tyson, one of our guidance counselors, all receiving tenure this evening. Any discussion on the personnel recommendations?
James.
Yeah, James.
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Congratulations. On the agenda, we do have a brief recess to have an opportunity to congratulate these fine young people and have an opportunity to have some coffee and cake. Everybody except Patrick is young.
Nice. He's been waiting for that.
We're going to begin in 2 minutes. 2 minutes to continuing the meeting. Thank you.
And I try to go to what I can.
All any of us can do.
We're going to reconvene. Moving on to item number 10, resolve the Board of Education upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools acknowledges receipt of the CSE CPS recommendation meetings as presented. Motion for approval of CSE CPSE meetings. James, second. Joanne, discussion? James?
Yes.
Susan? Yes. Frank?
Yes.
Joanne? Russell? Myself, yes. Resolve the Board of Education upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools accepts the terms stated in the Jewel Agreement dated April 14, 2016 between the Marlborough Central School District and employee 1289. Upon such terms, extend the probationary period for an additional one-year period until August 31st, 2017. Motion for approval of the Jewel Agreement. Frank, second. Joanne, discussion?
I have a question in regards to the actual agreement itself, not particularly to anyone. So when this takes effect, and at the end of the following year, if any person does not meet the requirements that they are intended to meet, what actually happens with that employee at that time?
It's the same exact process as a regular 10-year period. Basically, they need to either get my recommendation or not. If they don't get my recommendation, then their 10-year period expires and move on to a different district or another career.
But it's definitely to move on to a different district, so they,
Correct.
okay.
There's no more extensions beyond the one-year extension in a Jewel agreement.
Yeah, someone had asked me that.
You
They
get
were-
one time in a Jewel agreement, one shot at it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion regarding the Jewel Agreement? James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Resolve the Board of Education upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools increase the 2015-16 budget by $2,824 for money received from the spring 2016 session of adult education receipts in support of the general expenses and the following codes as presented. Motion for approval of budget increase. Frank, second. Russell? Discussion. James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Resolve the Board of Education upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools adopts the proposed 2016-17 school year budget in the amount of $54,445,926. Motion for approval of the budget. Frank, second. James, discussion? James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Resolve the Board of Education upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools accepts the donation of $52. The donator is requested that the, item 14. Resolve the Board of Education upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools adopts the property tax report card for 2016-17 as presented. Motion for approval of property tax report card. James, second. Frank, discussion? James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Resolve the Board of Education upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools accepts the donation of $52. The donator has requested the funds be used for lacrosse for the 2015-16 school year. Motion for approval of donation. James, second. Frank, discussion. James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Is there any old business? We do have some new business. I have a letter from the town supervisor, Mr. Al Lanzetta. Dear Mr. Bell and board members, members of the Marlborough Town Board recently met with the Ulster County Planning Director, Dennis Doyle, to talk about ways to make the hamlet of Milton more inviting to the public. This is an effort to encourage business in the hamlet area. One issue that needs to be addressed is a lack of parking. Mr. Doyle suggested that we consider the use of administrative buildings parking on weekends when the building is not in use. We thought it was an idea worth exploring. Would the school district, school board consider making this extra parking available to the community on weekends? If so, what would your suggestion and concerns be? The town looks forward to working with you. Sincerely, Alfonso P. Lanzetta, Town of Marlborough Supervisor. I'll just throw this out there. Would anybody object to people using the school parking lot to walk down and visit the local businesses?
Can it be a little more clear? Because what I'm concerned is we're going to run into a situation where people are parking down by the police department, and I don't want to go through that again. Can we limit it to the upper parking lot?
Technically, I don't think we can really limit anywhere from parking on public property, but that was the concern I had.
It's actually private property.
Is it private? Okay.
My concern is,
So we would
removed something.
establish a no parking zone
for the police department,
for the police department, and then otherwise,
allow public on. My concern is we removed something, created an uproar because of foot traffic, and now we're going to allow foot traffic.
well, I
back
think
to
they
that area.
specifically asked for that parking lot, not necessarily this parking lot. However, I think making a public parking zone and a specific zone would be worth discussion. Ralph, you had a question?
Town board meeting is strictly the lot upstairs.
Okay.
And it will be marked just for the weekends, correct?
Weekends and evenings, I would say.
What's the liability on, say somebody from out of town comes and they park, they're not a resident, and they park there and they slip and fall?
We'd have to run that by our insurance company to find out whether this use is something that's acceptable.
Should also run it by the town's insurance company, and they have a claim on the property as well.
I mean, effectively, we have that to some extent with the downstairs parking lot, so it's just something we'd want to clear with legal and insurance.
So would it be safe to say, or would anybody object to the board exploring the liability question and the no parking?
Yeah, I'm certainly not opposed to it. I would just like
Emergency
to see it written as,
Okay.
We'll
as it
talk
was
about
presented at
costs
the
for
town.
new signage, too. So we'll get you a full package on the perspective. Okay.
Yeah, because the other, I mean, the other issue is, none of it's posted currently that you can't park there anyhow.
Right.
So the reality of it is, the attorneys may say that there is no additional, because there's nothing to stop somebody today from pulling in there if the spot's empty, parking and walking down below. I mean, people do it at the high school and all kinds of other places on a regular basis, whether it's to, meet somebody and go somewhere and it's just a convenient place. So hopefully the attorneys won't find a reason to make it an issue.
Right, and I think what he really wants to do is put some signage that would direct people up to the lot, saying more municipal parking, follow the arrow kind of thing.
Gotcha.
But let's look, we'll look
See what he
at some of
says,
those
yeah.
pieces.
So would it be a scenario where you limit the amount of time someone could park, or?
Oh, we could write some parking tickets, get some revenue.
Well, there's always
Just go
a
down to
way
the
for,
elementary school and make a fortune. Come on.
We'll get a couple boots over here and we can,
I would like that noted that I did not suggest parking tickets.
For the record, this is all in fun.
No, it was. I just got one today up at Kingston, so it's a little sore subject.
That's very easy to do.
But that would just be for the weekend, so the sign would
I
say,
think off hours.
It's up to the board.
because I have to tell you, the only thing is I have an issue, because a lot of times, like Frank said, they'll come during the week, park, and then go down to the,
Well, they're probably going to do it anyway, but I mean, if you're going to post it and allow it,
Yeah, I
then
mean,
you
if
should
nobody's
specify when it's
monitoring
available.
it.
They specifically asked for a weekend, so I mean, we could start there.
And this is for parking for people to walk into the town. Now, there's no, are there sidewalks out there from the parking to get down to town?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, and there's proper ADA accessibility?
Maybe. I don't know.
We should just look
Yeah, I
at
don't
all
know.
that when we,
Yep.
The
Yeah.
the road is not ADA compliant, that's for sure.
It's a little steep. but let's,
All right.
Look into all that
Right.
before we
Yeah.
move forward. That's my recommendation.
let me do a little bit of homework and report back to the board with some information. All right?
All right. Any other new business? Any?
Yes.
Oh, yes. So this will be the resolution for the merger of the Highland and Marlboro boys swim teams. Resolve, the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves the request to merge the Marlboro Central School District boys swim team with the Highland Central School District's boys swim team for the 2016-17 school year. Such request is contingent on approval of the Mid-Hudson Athletic League. Motion for approval of the merger of the Marlboro and Highland boys swim teams, Joanne, second, Russell. Discussion?
So what does this do with our current merger with the three schools?
I think that's with FDR.
I don't know that,
FDR is no longer interested in the merger.
Okay.
I think that's what I heard, is we're still consolidating the two schools,
Not three.
not the third anymore.
So we lose our coach then?
Actually, I think they're gonna shadow our program, I think is what you're approving. And I think they're gonna have a coach, and we're gonna have a coach, that's how I believe.
Well, Marlboro's coach is the FDR coach.
this one requests the merger, the fallback position is the shadow. John is expecting that this may be turned down by Mahal, which would turn into a shadow, as opposed to a merger.
I would just hope whatever we send Mahals is we reiterate to the thick-headed people there that the governor keeps talking about consolidation and working together to save districts money, and them turning this down would be totally opposite of the direction from the state.
Deborah Hobb is actually attending a meeting tonight to that effect. We spoke on the phone the other day to be a partner on this, so
Okay, good.
we wanted to take this action to show a support of the voting body to support that as well. So we're right with you, Frank.
Okay. I just-
Any other discussion? Jeff? James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne? Russell? Myself, yes.
You could vote as Jeff, Danny.
Any other new business? Oh, yeah.
It was quite fascinating to go and see they had a course on CPR, and most of the athletic and the coaches were all there doing that. They had flipped this classroom, and they were also incorporating in that the Chrome books that we just received. One was also with Officer Fulton on safety, which actually the class was very good. Irene was in it. And basically, I just wanted to report back to the board, it went well. There was a lot of interaction with the staff and the presenters. Everybody seemed to be very pleased. And basically, that was, the report. If you need anything else you want to know,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Mike, you want to add about the savings by doing it this way?
Oh, yeah,
Yes, there was part of the superintendent's day is that we had our own, we had staff members that were grading tests from other school districts.
Right. Our K through 8 staff in the ELA and math subject areas, at the direction of Ms. Hecht and our two principals for middle school and high school, scored in-house. So we had been scoring half of our math tests in-house and realized some real savings there. The other half of the tests were being sent out to a scoring company, but our ELA tests in grades 3 through 8 were being scored by the scoring company to the tune of about $20,000. So by moving that superintendent's conference day to Tuesday and having those staff score in-house, not only do we have that money saved, there's a tremendous gain in true research and item analysis as a staff looks through tests and fingers through page by page and reads students' answers and looks at the questions and the expectations of the state. There will be differences in how our teachers instruct our children this September because of that experience. They see the real evidence of what children have to provide on these tests. and can gain and will gain. Just in the conversations around the table, to me it was magical, listening to the conversations they were having, saying this will impact how I change my instruction for this September. So not the $20,000 is certainly nothing to shake a stick at, but the instructional gain, I think, is magical. So thank you. And highlight that.
Any other new business? Any other items? Anybody from the community like to comment or have questions?
I have a question. I came in here today with a list of grievances that I had, but I've changed my mind. I think you guys did a fantastic presentation with the budget. And I've been assured from some people on the board that I trust very much that we're going in the right direction, and this is the guy that had it at home. And I appreciate that. And but one thing that I would like to bring up, a couple of weeks ago I had mentioned something about an annual professional performance ratings where Marlboro and Highland had a discrepancy of some 46 educators. And John Cantone, a friend of all of ours, highly respected here, asked you to look into the whys of that. And I was just wondering, was that ever done?
Yes. When we actually looked at the numbers, I don't know where the source was. No, but I mean, we looked at the actual numbers on the APPR reports, and it was about 7 or 8 staff members difference as far as the categories. So I don't know, we didn't see the discrepancy in the number of staff members that you saw. So perhaps we could talk even offline, or maybe come into my office and we can look at some documents together. But we didn't see that discrepancy that you saw.
Now, you went on the website to look at this, or did you call up Highland to find out what the actual their numbers are?
No, we pulled all our reports from the state. Yeah, we pull our data sources from the original data files. So I'm not exactly sure where those numbers came from, but there's also a factor too that the offerings that we have at our high school are miles beyond the offerings that we're seeing in some of our neighboring school districts as far as quality programming for college offerings, which is real money for families. Children graduate from Marlboro High School with a lot of college credits and walk in sometimes as a second semester freshman, sometimes in some instances as sophomores. That's real money in people's pockets. A SUNY tuition right now, if you go to State University of New York, all in, room and board and tuition is about $20,000. And that's the cheapest you're going to find around the state if you're in a SUNY. Private schools, the cheapest I know around is St. Rose, which is about $40,000, but that is about $20,000 cheaper than the next cheapest privates. Most privates are in the range of $50 to $60, so those are real dollars. So there aren't apples-to-apples comparisons with all of our surrounding school districts. We have a very strong program of advanced course options for kids, and I think it's something that is a good piece to remind ourselves of, that families save a lot of money because of that. It's not something that I have the luxury of in Washingtonville, where my children go to school. We don't have the number of college offerings that we have here. So it does.
Like I mentioned when I was here a couple of weeks ago, that we're facing over 200 foreclosures in the Milton Marlboro area.
Yeah.
They're not doing that up in Highland. Our admissions every year has gone down. According to the thing, an article out in the paper, over 8% since 2017. I know it's less this year than last year. So, I mean, you know, there is a cost involved here. Our taxes continue to go up and up. And I know you made a great presentation. The levy went down, but my taxes are going up.
Right. Could you share that article with me when we're done? Yeah. All right, thank you.
As a matter of fact, I'd love to come into your office. I got a whole bunch of them I'd love to show you.
Let's do it. Contact Irene and come on in.
Absolutely.
All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anybody else? That's all. Mark?
Michael, I just wanted to ask if you could elaborate a little bit more on Bayside discussions and when you might be contributing more to that discussion and where that is headed.
Yeah, there were very initial discussions about some perspectives that really is private conversation at this point. The project, I believe, is going to be moving. The public discussions have been happening between the town board and the developers. This was an opportunity in a private forum for the school district, through me, to spend some time talking about some potential issues. All of those issues were surrounding ingress and egress, transportation-related matters. These two properties are going to be right next to each other. How do they impact each other? So without getting into any specifics, that's what the focus was. It really was an opportunity. There were other constituencies there too, so it's low risk because it's not lawyers there in the room. It's just people talking about, hey, these are some issues. And the purpose behind it, it's actually organized by the Ulster County Planning Department, I believe it is, to try to put the issues that will come up during the planning board process in front of the developer and the architects, so that maybe they can tackle some of those issues prior to the planning board meeting, so that that process doesn't get bogged down in dealing with them then. We will still make sure that our issues are known publicly as that planning process goes forward, but they are really surrounding transportation-related matters and ingress and egress and that kind of stuff. We have a signed, sealed lease with AT&T.
They have not
They have
executed
not exercised that
option.
to build. Good question.
We're in our second year of a 2-year deal, so at the end of next year, they have to either renew or build. I think it was 2.
Yeah, I don't know. We'd have to look at the lease.
Yes. Up by the baseball fields. I believe it was a 2-year option to build, a 5-year lease. If they don't exercise the option within 2 years, they lose the 5-year lease. Go back and look at it. Anybody else? We do not have an executive session on the agenda for this evening, so with that, motion for adjournment. James, second. Joanne, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.